Meh. What did I tell you earlier, Gabe? Somebody wrote in the Carbless ESPN Milwaukee talking text line, or maybe it was even on the YouTube stream, Packers are mid AF.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
That's something that your son will have to explain to you, Rob.
No, I got that one. I got I know what mid is.
And AF. Well, you know what AF is. Matt LaFleur says, we got to do the things that we think we can have success with. What would those be at this point?
Well, I mean, I think what they did well this year was run the football and, take the ball away on defense. Like, I mean, those are the things that they kind of hang their hats on with this team. But what they're going to need to do, though, is add some explosive plays, which were completely, for the most part, absent yesterday. And that's going to be really difficult without Christian Watson. I mean, it's most likely a season-ending injury for him. Looks like an ACL. They'll have the test today that confirm that. But, the indications I got were that it was most likely a torn ACL. And you can tell that from the way Matt LaFleur was, answered the question. Usually he says, we'll have to get some more information. And when he said yesterday, it's not looking good. That tells you what you need to know. So, I mean, look, I know they're going in the playoffs on a sour note. There's no question about it. I still think they could make a run. I also think that, they're probably the progression would be nice to see from last year to this year. I think that we did see it a little bit in the regular season. I ultimately think that, it's still Jordan Love's second year as a starter. We talked about this a lot during the season. Sometimes you take a little bit of a step back in year two. I really think that 2025 was sort of the ultimate peak to what they were trying to build, where they're going to have, they would have had all their players, back for another year. Obviously, Watson's probably going to be gone for quite a bit of next year. But I think that's sort of the way when Brian Gutekunst said, when he drafted those young receivers the same year Jordan was starting as a quarterback, for the first time, he said, I wanted these guys to grow together. And I think that's still the plan. Now, it doesn't look great right now, but I still think that plan is on par.
Do you know what Lucas Van Ness is, Rob? I mean, is he a bust?
Do I know what he is? Yeah. He's a guy who has
I kind of like even with these receivers, Rob, I don't see him getting any better. I think I know what they are. I mean, I don't think any of them are going to turn into a T. Higgins or Justin Jefferson, which I think is what this team needs.
I was going to say that's the one thing, Chewy, with the receivers. We'll get to Van Ness in a minute. But the one thing with the receivers is, they told us all offseason about how they don't need a number one, and it's great to have all these guys because any one of them can go get 100. Sometimes you need one, though, right? Like sometimes when in big games and big moments, sometimes you have to have a guy who is going to get you the ball, like is going to catch the ball, is going to get you a first down, is going to get you a touchdown in the red zone. And, right now they don't have it at the receiver position. I still wonder if Tucker Kraft can become that, the go-to, like a little bit of a Gronkowski kind of a guy, a Kittle kind of a guy like that in that sense at some point. And again, he's only in his second year. I think they need to target him more. I think they need to get him in a position where he is the number one option on more plays. But you're right. They don't have a number one. And this is the problem with not having one. As for Van Ness, he's not even starting, I don't believe. Like, I tweeted the snap counts, and I'm not sure where his related to. I got to look at him and Kingsley 𝙂𝘼𝘽, but 𝙂𝘂𝘼𝘽 started the game alongside Rashawn Gary. Now, I realize starting doesn't always matter, but Van Ness played 27 snaps, and Kingsley 𝙂𝘂𝘼𝘽 played 35, and Rashawn Gary played 28. Now I realize that some of those guys weren't playing a full load. Kenny Clark barely played in the second half, but yeah, when you're a first round pick and you're at the end of year two and you're not one of the top two, defensive ends / edge rushers, that's a problem.
Well, it sounds like you think that Tucker Kraft could potentially be a star. And Rob, I've asked you this. I feel a lot over the last 2 years. I feel there's not enough top-level talent on this roster after you get past Jacobs and McKinney. So because they are the youngest team in the league, other than Tucker Kraft, is there anybody else you believe could grow into a star on this roster?
I think if Romeo Doubs were in the right headspace all the time, and I think he has the potential. I think on the defensive side of the ball, I think Edgerrin Cooper, Javon Bullard, Evan Williams have that potential. I think there's possibilities there. You can have a lot of B players, but you still need a couple A's. I was looking at this the other day. The 2010 team that won the Super Bowl was I believe, the fifth youngest team in the league. So you can be now they had three guys that were near the end of their career in Woodson, Chad Clifton, and Donald Driver. But Donald Driver really wasn't much of a factor that year. But that team was still really young. They were the fifth youngest team in the league. Their average age, I think, was 25 and a half years. This team's average age is 25.1, youngest team in the league. It's not, you don't necessarily always have to have a ton of veterans. You need some. If they can go out and supplement in free agency, another guy or two like they did this offseason with Jacobs and McKinney, because those were obviously huge additions. Now, doesn't mean they're going to work out as well. And I know like the cornerback market is not very strong. They need a corner desperately. I think with a combination of another free agent addition or two, and maybe hitting on another draft pick or two, I think they could be right there. It's fun. Well, I feel like we're talking about this is a conversation we should be having after they lose to the Eagles next week. Not today.
I guess any problem though that I've always had with any comparison to the 2010 team, Rob, like Greg Jennings was light years ahead of anything they have right now at wide receiver. Like, he had already been established at that point. Charles Woodson was coming off a Defensive Player of the Year. Nick Collins, like, they had the top-end roster. I mean, even the young guys were a lot better than the young guys they have now. Like, they don't have anybody who looks like Clay Matthews, who was only in year 2. Like, those guys were ascending to superstardom. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. And, yes, they are the youngest team in the league, but I have to squint real hard if I think that Romeo Doubs is going to be anything like Greg Jennings was.
Yeah, and Jordy Nelson was in, year 3, right?
Yeah.
And he was still in a little bit. Heck, he had 3 drops in the Super Bowl. Now he had 100 yards plus in the Super Bowl. And you could have argued that he could have been the MVP of the Super Bowl if he hadn't had those drops. But, I get your point. And there's no complete equal comparison across the board. But I do think that it's a little bit like, teams just don't, you could have a one-year wonder team, right? And you could make a run. But I don't think that's the way the Packers, for right or wrong, I don't think that's the way the Packers view it. They build it as a building progression, from 92 to 93 to 94, 95, and so on, from 08, 09, 10. I mean, those are like 3-year chunks, right? Like, you guys made the playoffs in 93, starting in 93, right? And it wasn't until 96 that you got there. So that's a 4-season chunk. With Rodgers, 08, they didn't make the playoffs. They make it 09, go to the Super Bowl in 10. I think this is an organization. And look, you can be frustrated with it as a fan, but that's probably a better way to build it than, these teams like the Jets that are just taking shots in the dark with a one-off.
Rob Demovsky, go ahead.
Rob, do you think this team knows it's not good enough, though? Because when we went to Dallas, you're talking 93 and 94.
Yeah.
We beat, I think, Detroit at home, and then next year we beat Atlanta. And then going to Dallas, we were like, maybe we can win.
Yeah.
We never actually thought, hey, we're going in there and we're taking them down. You think that team has a little bit of this? Because they haven't beaten anybody. I mean, they lost.
No, I don't know how you can, Dewey, because, you can say all you want that, we can win, but you haven't done it. And I think that's a big problem with this team. I think, you would know this better than me. And I think that's interesting that you say that was the feeling, because I think sometimes we equate, or at least fans equate how they feel about a team with how players feel about it. And I think players always think differently, and that may not be right, or that may not be wrong. It's just like coaches. I remember, this is maybe a reach of an example, but I remember when, the Packers, I don't know if they traded for or signed Rick Meyer after he had flamed out in Seattle. And it was like, a guy like Mike Lindgren probably thinks, you know what, he was no good everywhere he's been, but I can fix him because I'm the guy, right? And he did. But I wonder if players, fans think, God, they can't beat anybody. They can't beat anybody. But players maybe don't think that way. They think, look, we can beat people because I know I'm good, or whatever the case may be. So I do wonder, if the narrative around a team that they haven't won any games against the top teams, and they were 1-5 against teams in the NFC playoffs. The only win was against the Rams in Week 5 when the Rams weren't really the Rams. But I still think there's those guys are. I think there's a belief in there. It was a little startling though to hear some guys in the locker room yesterday say the message after the game was we had to make sure everybody was still together, not pointing fingers. The fact that you're doing that, heading into the playoffs may not be the greatest sign.
Rob, we got a lot of reaction this morning. Obviously, people very frustrated. And if, again, I'm reading through the frustration, it is not so much that they lost to the Bears. It is that they haven't looked good, trying to now go into the postseason, trying to knock off the Eagles, et cetera, et cetera. But we got a lot of reaction from people who are directing their frustration at Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur is not the guy. Matt LaFleur got out-coached. Matt LaFleur, time management. Matt LaFleur gets rattled and there's pressure and all these things. How should folks look at Matt LaFleur, who has obviously been one of the most successful coaches that the Packers organization has ever had?
Yeah, I think those are fair assessments. There's no question. How many times have you heard him say that's on me, and it's admirable to take the blame for it, but at some point you got to stop making those kind of mistakes and in-game decisions. I would say if there's one really valid criticism with him, it's that he's indecisive at those moments. I mean, like, for better or worse, Dan Campbell doesn't hesitate. Like, he doesn't take any time to make a decision, and he makes it. Sometimes you feel like Matt LaFleur, maybe the wheels are turning a little bit before he's ever able to, kind of make the call. And it doesn't mean he's not making the right call, but sometimes when you take that much time, it enters or inserts a level of uncertainty to your football team.
Rob, we appreciate you hanging out with us this morning. Obviously, the hope is that the Packers can hang and that they can beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Right now, I just don't feel like what they have done on the field has inspired a lot of confidence in the fan base. We appreciate you hanging out with us.
My only hope is that whatever happens in the game, my only hope is that next Monday isn't the last time we're doing this, because this is a great start to the week. But unfortunately, when I'm sitting in the Philadelphia airport, as I told Josh, a week from now, waiting to board my flight, it may be our last one.
Well, that's a very sad thought. So thanks for throwing that out there.
I told you it wasn't going to be a beacon ray of light just shining down upon us.
Jen had hope.
I really did. I thought maybe, hey, listen, maybe I'm off my rocker, and Rob will be like, no, Jen, here are all the reasons why you should be optimistic about the Packers making a deep playoff run. Thank you, Rob.